Paulie Malignaggi here for Paulie TV. What's going on, guys? And today, you know what? Today we're going to talk about the art of self-promotion, the art of the various ways and techniques we self-promote, and how that's really changed through the decades and through the generations, right? Because I think self-promotion today is different than, you know, at least the avenues you have to promote yourself are different than the avenues that were available to guys in my generation and even prior to my generation, you know? So it's interesting, but nonetheless, the common denominator is that you do need to have an ability to self-promote, because you can be a great fighter and people will watch you. Yes, you'll make money, but I just don't feel like you'll get the notoriety and the fan base that you might deserve as a terrific fighter if you don't have the marketing and selling ability. And of course, there's a flip side to that coin. You can actually not be that good at all, or even be a mediocre fighter, but get tremendous accolades and attention based on your ability to do some incredible self-promotion and be promotable in general. So I think, you know, there's different things, but I think the main thing you probably have to have that, you know, is most important than anything, I think it's kind of a natural trait, is charisma. You know, your charisma gives you an ability to be a talker, being witty. It gives you, you know, a lot of times charismatic people are kind of witty as well, or I think being witty is definitely an extra weapon. I don't necessarily think every charismatic person is witty, but I think being charismatic and witty is a great combination if you have that. Again, certain things I don't think can be taught. You know, you can, and that kind of situation, you know, charisma and wittiness, I think, are more natural than they are teachable. But nonetheless, fighters today, you know, I've gone over this before with social media presences and whatnot. You know, I think there's tremendous ability to, you know, have a social media presence, and you can base it around your boxing. You can also be known for other things too. There's a fighter named Johnny Wu that, you know, is promoted by Pro Box Promotions, who I work with down in Florida, and he's got a tremendous following on TikTok and his social media platforms, and he's just a simple prospect. He just turned pro, good fighter, but nonetheless, he's been able to develop a following. Yes, it's boxing based, but it's also based on other things as well. So I think, you know, you centerpiece it around boxing when it comes to social media presence, but also you may have some intricate, detailed things that make you unique, you know, and I think the world needs to know some of that. You know, I remember with me, I speak 2 languages, almost 3 languages. At this point, you know, I'm rather fluent in Spanish as well. So, you know, you can probably consider Spanish as one of my languages. I'm definitely 100% fluent in Italian and English. And, you know, a lot of people were surprised when they realized I knew how to speak different languages. You know, I think that's always a weapon. If you have various languages that you speak, I think it's important that the world knows that, and you're able to do stories and even media in those various languages. I think if you have if you're multilingual or bilingual or trilingual or whatever lingual, do media in all those languages, you know, so people get to see the fact that you're able to speak all those languages and become familiar with you speaking those languages as well. And you give more people a chance to relate to you, because, you know, some people can relate to one language, some people can relate to another language. So, you know, relatability, I think, is key, and it's important in terms of being marketable. Everybody wants to be able to sort of relate to their heroes and to the people they look up to and you know, basically cheer for. You know, for me, is definitely, you know, I've always been kind of naturally witty, naturally, you know, I don't want to toot my own horn, but naturally charismatic. And I was always a talker. I learned to talk very, very young, actually. My first language was Italian when I was a kid, because I lived in Italy at the time I learned to talk. And, you know, I learned to walk and talk very early, very, very early. So I could have full-blown conversations. By 2 years old, I was not even 2 years old. I could have full-blown conversations with you in Italian. So I think that sort of stayed with me, and I was always a talker, and I haven't stopped talking since, you know. So it's sort of, you know, that confident brashness and being able to say what you feel. Listen, it's not for everybody. Being controversial is not for everybody, but from a personal standpoint, from personal experience, it does help. You know, if you were told the line and you're everybody's cup of tea all the time, you know, you're going to be sort of average unless you come from a major boxing culture. Like, for example, I don't think Canelo has to be that controversial to get to be a phenom, because he comes from a culture where boxing is just bred in you, and then they support their boxers. But if you're not from a boxing culture, or you're from a culture that supports boxing as an average sport instead of a mainstream sport, I think being controversial certainly helps you, you know, because it generates more opinions out of you people may not always agree with you, but they certainly will talk about you and will discuss you. And I think it's important to be discussed, whether it's in a positive light or negative light. I think being discussed is a big part of branding. Because if nobody's talking about you, then it means you're not that important. You don't really mean anything, And I think when it comes to being a brand as a pro athlete or as an athlete in general, you want to be able to be talked about. I started to understand the importance of self-promotion early on. I loved watching old Muhammad Ali videos and seeing how cool his trash talking was. Ali made trash talking cool. He also wasn't vulgar about it. It was a different time period where people now are much more vulgar. I feel like it almost has gone too far. But there was a time where Muhammad Ali's trash talking was perfect. And if you really notice one thing about that, and maybe it was just the times they lived in, Ali was a brilliant, witty trash talker, but he never talked about money. You look at and even when Ali's talking about other things. He's having serious interviews. He's never talking about money very much, or if at all. Never talking about how he's the brand and you don't fight him. He's not gonna fight you because you don't mean anything, or he makes more money and all this other stuff. Basically, Ali didn't have to do that because he literally fought everybody. There's not too many guys in history that literally fought everybody in their generation. I mean, Ali fought everybody in his generation, including guys with despicable styles for his style, like a terrible style matchups like Ken Norton. He fought Ken Norton 3 times, where most of the time a guy in his position would avoid a guy with that style, So I feel like, one of the reasons he also never brought that up is because he really never needed to. He literally fought everybody. So, he's never bringing up the fact that, he makes money and this guy doesn't mean anything, so I don't need to fight him. He's not that popular, so I don't need to fight him. Because you see a lot of guys, they try to trash talk in ways where they sort of make it economical, make it about economics, and instead of making it about the sport. Listen, I think when fighters do that, I don't think fans is really supposed to care about the economics of anything. It's up to the fighters to care about that behind the scenes. But when I see fans start to get behind fighters about, oh, well, he doesn't have to fight this guy because he doesn't sell 2 tickets. Why do you care how many tickets anybody sells, bro? You know what I mean? Like, you want the best fighting the best, and that's it. That's everywhere. That's where it should end as far as the fan base conversation. You shouldn't be counting anybody else's money. Okay, so if you're a fan of the sport, you should want to see the best matchups, not because, this guy doesn't sell, so he doesn't have to fight him. Like, because you decided this guy's your favorite fighter, and now you're defending him, not fighting certain fighters. That's not how it's supposed to be. So I think when it comes to marketing yourself, fighting all the top guys you can fight in a smart way, nonetheless, because I think, unfortunately, boxing has become a sport where they value the O too much, even though people complain about it. The same sport that complains about the O being too much are the ones that also make it valuable. How many guys with a loss are on the pound for pound list? Exactly. So stop making like your O doesn't mean anything, because the O obviously means something. If the O didn't mean as much as it meant, and you got credit for fighting everybody, then you'd see guys with losses on the pound for pound list. I'm sorry, but you don't. Not that the pound for pound list should mean anything. It's more so a fantasy sports kind of discussion. But for the hardcores, and then the hardcore fans and the non-casuals, they have these kind of conversations. They discuss these kind of conversations. The boxing media discusses these kind of conversations. So, I think promotability is important in a lot of ways, and certainly for me, I remember realizing my early promoter didn't have a lot of dates on TV, and I got dates as a prospect, but then when it came to getting big time dates, dates where I was the A side on a big fight, they were few and far between. So I realized that I was going to have to become an opponent for fighters whose promoters did have the dates, So I said, the only way you do that is if you make yourself controversial, make yourself a selling point, make yourself marketable, so that these promoters will see you and see like, oh man, this guy against my guy is a good fight because this guy will sell my fight, And I think that's what I started doing it, and I think, people would see my personality. It kind of got branded into my trash talking. People would see it, and, it would, I think it would make things more fun. It made a lot of people hate me. It made people, if you were a fan of the other fighter, I mean, it made people really happy on fight night if I was getting beat up. You know what I mean? I can remember talking a lot of trash in the Miguel Cotto build-up. The Puerto Rican fans let me have it after the fight. The Amir Khan fight was also a big trash talking promotion. Where we actually got into a brawl at the weigh-in. I think there's a video of that on YouTube if you guys want to see it. Me and Amir, we're real cool now. You know, we're respectful and cool and friendly. And I've got a lot of respect for Amir and what he's done in his career. But at the time we fought, you know, it's bad blood. It's competition leads to bad blood sometimes. And we got into a brawl at the weigh-in, you know. So that was a crazy one as well. And then, of course, I think the craziest press conferences of all and craziest promotion of all. And it's still one of my favorites to this day. I know it was kind of vulgar and it got kind of crazy. It got kind of, out of hand. But it came at a point in my career where my ambition for boxing sort of was waning. I wasn't as hungry about boxing. I wasn't as enthusiastic about it. I'm not going to say hungry because it's always nice when you're making a lot of money. But I wasn't as enthusiastic about boxing as I had been earlier in my career. And I get this young, flashy kid, Adrian Broner, as my opponent. And he is such a good trash talker that he makes me step up my game. He makes me step up my game and take it to levels where I think I was no longer able to get to those levels of trash talking, to that level of wittiness, that level, to come up with those insults and comebacks. It made me feel young again. That promotion, that fight, for it was like a time capsule moment for me because it was a moment where I felt young again. I started loving it again. Yeah, I was angry. I was, you had the bad blood. Sure, you had all that. But, it was also like you felt alive. You felt alive again. And boxing at a certain point starts to become sort of a business and you've lost a lot of the enthusiasm for it. And at that point, I was a world champion, but I wasn't as enthusiastic about it as I had been earlier in my career. But in that moment, in that press conference, those press conferences and that promotion, I felt alive again, man. I've had this kid just bringing out my wittiness and he had great wittiness and he had great trash talking ability. And it was just so good. And I could see like the fan bases, everybody was talking about this fight. Everybody was talking about this matchup. It just made it real fun, obviously I wish they would have gave me the decision because I felt like I deserved it. But more so than anything, I felt like, they dropped the ball by not making the rematch. We had the highest rated boxing after Showtime Championship boxing of 2013 was me versus Broner in June 2013. And insanely, the geniuses, or boxing always shoots itself in the foot, the geniuses involved in that fight somehow found a way to not make that rematch. You had a world championship on the line. You would have had the world championship on the line in the rematch, obviously. You had a built-in trash-talking promotion that kind of stayed kind of red hot after that fight for a while. So you could have easily prolonged it into a second fight or maybe even into a third fight.
People are still talking about it.
Yeah, people still talk about it now, but people more so talk about it like, oh, Paulie lost his girl to Adrian. If you really want to believe that, what am I going to do? I've been with more girls than you've got hairs on your head, I promise. It's not even close. So, but she wasn't my girlfriend, so I think it also made it more fun. When I looked back on it, I think if it was somebody who was my girlfriend, it would have probably been a little bit more bitter. But it made it more fun. Like I would have loved to have gone through it again and have been able to compete again. And I'm telling you, we would have doubled our views. I'm telling you, if we would have continued that promotion, we would have doubled our views. People still talk about it to this day because it was such a memorable promotion, and we had a very good fight with each other. A split decision. Close fight. I think our styles would have always meshed together and made very close fights. We just kind of were each other's foil for that. But I don't know, man. I feel like they dropped the ball with that. But again, marketability. Adrian was a big trash talker, controversial. Listen, you have to be really secure in yourself if you're going to be the bad guy. If you're going to play the bad guy, because sometimes I see Adrian jumping off of social media because he can't take all the abuse and whatnot. Here's the thing, you got to, if you're going to set yourself up to play the bad guy, you also have to understand that people are going to come at you in a negative light and come at you sideways on social media, especially, and you can't let that affect you. Like, I've never really cared. Don't get me wrong. We all, at times, I'll argue with a troll here or there, or, I'll answer back or whatnot. But in reality, it depends on what kind of day you're having. But in reality, if you're going to play this kind of role, you kind of have to expect the blowback, which is a lot of negativity coming your way. You're playing the bad guy. Think about it. You're playing the guy that people love to hate. So, it's a fine line you're working with there. You've got to sort of embrace that and not get frustrated with it. But, of course, we're all human and we sort of all sometimes wind up asking ourselves on certain days, we're having bad days, man, I wish more people liked me. But you know, then you look at your bank account, or you look at, you know, the way you've been able to change your life through boxing, and the way you're, you know, you've just grown as a person in general. You know, like I look back on everything now, and you know, you're just appreciative of all of that. But I do think in a sport where, you know, the fan base is niche, you sort of have to do more stuff to get yourself out there. And I think in a generation where we are today, you know, I think it's very, very important that you use all the avenues and all the tools you have. Don't get me wrong. In another video I did about Ryan Garcia, that can sometimes make you so much money that you start not being very hungry about your boxing, because you sort of start to monetize yourself in other ways. But nonetheless, if you're a fighter at your core, you still need to know how to balance out that self-promotion. It's very, very important.
Who's doing it the best right now?
I don't know, man. As far as trash talking is concerned,
Our guy, Jake Paul.
Yeah, I mean, Jake is a great troll. You know, he's a great troll in terms of that regards. I don't think there's one guy that, you know, is such a good trash talker that, you know. Listen, bro, guys with that kind of phenomenal trash talking. There's trash talkers and there's non-trash talkers in every generation. But guys with that kind of phenomenal trash talking ability don't come around that often. I don't think my ability to trash talk and my ability to be promoted was taken advantage of enough. I mean, I could speak 3 languages. I could have talked trash to you in three languages. You know what I'm saying? Like that was never marketed or branded on me. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't have teams during my boxing career that knew how to take advantage of all the things I had at my disposal, or they were just too lazy. You know, which in boxing you have a lot of those kind of people, or in business in general you have a lot of those kind of people. But I think, you know, there's very rare when you get guys like a Prince Nassim Hamed or an Adrian Braun or even
Floyd.
Or even a Floyd. Floyd did it later. I don't think.
But he was still the villain, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Everybody, you know, you can play the villain, but Floyd played the villain in a way. Floyd was. I didn't feel like Floyd's trash talking was super witty, but he was just so good, and he made himself, you know, a worse and worse bad guy as he got more and more notoriety. I think once Floyd beat Oscar de la Hoya, I don't necessarily think he needed to play the bad guy, but he realized, you know, this is going to give him now a bigger platform. Let me continue to play the bad guy on this platform, which is a much bigger platform, and then I'll just be embraced as being the bad guy. And that's sort of what happened. Listen, you can't knock the business model. He did it great, and he made more money than any other boxer in history. And he was able to be successful more so than any other boxer in history. So you can't knock the business model, but I think as far as trash talking, I mean, again, it's also a charisma. It's not just trash talking. Like Nassim Hamed was charismatic, you know, like there's natural things you just did naturally. Adrian Broner too, you know what I mean? Like you'd be interviewing him and he'd be, you know, him and Jim Gray would have good banter, you know, like the trash talk, him and Jim. If you look at some of those post-fight interviews with Adrian has had with Jim Gray, you know, that was natural charisma, natural banter, you know, it just kind of flowed. It wasn't awkward. You know, Floyd was a good trash talker, but he never had that, you know, where it was like, you know, Ali and Cosell, Nassim Hamed and Larry Merchant, you know, where, I remember there was one post-fight interview where Larry's like, there's a bunch of Nassim's guys there, and Larry's trying to ask Nassim questions, but there's so many guys yelling, and Nassim's getting too close, and all of a sudden Nassim's like, easy, baby, easy, you know, with that British accent, like, okay, easy, baby. You know? So, or when he's telling it, he's talking, his guys are going too loud, and he's going, shh, 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 like I'm talking, you know. And everybody, you know, like, I don't know. It was just like, you get your random personality-based stuff, you know. I thought of those guys, you know, but you need to sort of be witty with the media as well, you know. And I think those are the best guys, and those make it the most fun. But either way, you know, there's various avenues, especially today. There's no excuses to not market yourself and not push yourself to do that self-promoting today. I know sometimes people want to say, oh, I want to just focus on my boxing and be the best boxer I can be. You should do that. But don't forget to market yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be the best boxer you can be, and not many people are going to know about you.
That's a perfect way to end. Awesome.